welcome back to the GSTL. And Foyu is down a game. Boom Boom with an excellent defense in game number 1 puts them into the lead. And a little bit of unhappy face there from Tassadar.
Yeah, well, we'll see if Tassadar has to play later, and if he does, if he's able to win against Patience. It was actually the game that we had in round 1 at the GSTL between Foyu and Azubu, where Patience kind of made his breakout appearance, where we saw him as a starting player, and then he was able to take 2 wins. He was able to take down not only Seed, but also SC, so that was pretty good back then. Yeah. And maybe that's just the team match where he really shines.
That's true. Could definitely be it. Sleep really looking like he is just ready to get the start. He's tired of all the waiting.
Yeah. And talking about the waiting, like actually between the break, like we had one thing, and I just mentioned it to you, and I want to have like the people's opinion out there. Samsung apparently, like Korea just announced that in 2015 they are going to focus on 4K screens on their smartphones, which in my opinion is a little bit insane. Like, I don't know, I get it that you want to improve your screens and everything, but do you really need a 4K screen on a smartphone? I would prefer a better battery instead.
Well, you know, Samsung's all about screens, man, and this news is to me like also a little bit sad because I just bought a new Samsung phone, but...
Well, don't worry, like they are only starting in 2015.
I got time.
But like, guys, let us know at Caldo and at ProxyWolf on Twitter what you think about that. I mean, maybe we have a couple of tech freaks out there who really know what all that is about. But I personally would just prefer a better battery instead of having another battery drainer on my phone that gives me a slightly better picture on the movie that I might or might not watch.
I'd probably watch it on my tablet or on my computer anyways.
Exactly. I feel like a 1080 screen is already good enough, at least up to the point where they really start to improve the battery life. Oh. I don't know. And you know, with more and more companies actually are focusing more on having a phone where you can't change the battery anymore. We see that on the LG phones, on a lot of them, on the Nexus as well. Samsung already announced the same thing. I feel that the battery improvement would be the much better choice instead of just going for better and better displays. So, I mean, I get it with a Note, it's like a bit bigger screen, but still, 1080 is absolutely fine.
Yeah, well, 1080 is totally fine by me. I know a lot of you guys back at home are watching this on 1080 and on 1080 screens, and Hurricane versus Azubu Sleep. This is going to be an interesting match to say the least. It will be on Yunsu. You know, Hurricane is one of the better players in Epic's Open. I feel like Sleep's got better individual league results, but it's all about the preparation for this best of 1 here.
That's definitely true. Jumping into the game right now, another Zerg versus Protoss at the GSTL Season 2 2013 Round 2. Hurricane going up against Sleep. God, you might call him. Starting to the bottom left of the map, we have the Protoss player. Starting for Foyu, it is
Hurricane Foyu.
The second Protoss player that they sent out today. The first one was not able to win his match in another Protoss versus Zerg. Seed not successful there against Boom Boom. Now Hurricane is up against this handsome guy to the top right in blue. Starting for Team Azubu, it is
Azubu Sleep.
Sleep. You know, a lot of these Azubu players have actually gone through so many team changes. Greet to Ryan Michael.
I think it's Ryan and Michael.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know. Ryan looks like Arthur from Arthur the Aardvark in that drawing. Who? Arthur. You know Arthur and Friends, that children's show?
No.
Maybe you were too old for that, but
I don't think that exists in Europe.
Well, anyways, I'm sure DW would have something to say about that picture, but as it is, we have a pool first from Boom Boom, which continues the trend from game 1. And actually, this is not Boom Boom. In fact, it's Sleep, so
it's also not Seed. It's actually Hurricane. So we are not in game 1 anymore, guys. We're pretty sure that the overlay will be changed in just a few seconds. This is still the old one, so you did not travel back in time and watch the same game again. This is actually Hurricane versus Sleep here.
No, somebody made a boo-boo.
There we go. Overlay mysteriously disappears. Look at that.
You know,
it's a shame. You know, it's like, I screwed that up, didn't I? And here it's back. No, it's fine.
The overlay is not as shy as it used to be. Sometimes when this sort of thing would happen, the overlay would be like, can you please put a random crowd shot? And then the overlay would mysteriously be fixed after the crowd shot. But now the overlay is not as shy. It's getting a little bit more confident in itself.
But that was the better part, you know, that was like really tricky and people didn't realize that. Now it's a little bit more obvious, like Captain Obvious, knocking at the door and being like, yep.
Especially when we talk about it, but it's fun to talk about the overlay. It's always, you know, a big part of the game.
As you mentioned, though, we had a pull first here for Sleep, and you know, this is one of the things that you want to do if you are going up against an opponent who not only starts here with a gateway first, but if you are actually a little bit worried. Actually, against the gateway first, of course, you would like to have the hatch first. The more traditional start is to go into the pool first, so that if there is a forge and an attempt to cannon, that you will have your queens and zerglings out fast enough to defend against it. So in this particular scenario, it doesn't really work out completely well for him, but it's a safer opening.
Yeah, much safer, and it gives him a little bit more pressure on the map. If you get a fast speed also, it's really tough for Hurricane, in this case, any Pros player in a PvZ, to take a fast third without you knowing about it. You always have those lings ready to stop that from happening if you want to take an aggressive third. Which is something you do see every now and then on this map. A little bit tougher with the rocks there to take it securely, on the other hand. And now, of course, he's going to drone up, eventually take that third base. So the question really is, what is Hurricane going to do on this map? And that's the question that we will find the answer to very shortly. He's actually adding gateways right now with no forge, going up to 3. So looks like we're just going to see a wall and a little bit of pressure because he doesn't have any sort of tech whatsoever right now.
Talking about pressure, I actually think there's a lot of pressure right now in Hurricane, since in my opinion, if Sleep is able to win this game, FOYU will be in a lot of trouble. We have a couple of matches coming up later on that look to be more favorable towards Team Azubu. For example, Lucky against Supernova. Lucky definitely showing us a couple of good matches in the last GSTL season in round 1, but in general, most people would probably side with Supernova there, who continuously is in the Premier League these days, and is just showing us a lot of great games. So Supernova probably the favorite here. Then we have Symbol versus Lenok, which can go either way. So if Hurricane would lose this match against Sleep, Azubu would be in a great spot to take this entire match before we even go into a potential ace game.
Yeah, that's true. And the pressure definitely is on in that case. Hurricane's somebody, though, I feel is not really going to feel it. He has a lot of lings on the way, and I think he's expecting a fast third here. He really wants to put pressure on. He wants to be able to deny that third base if it comes to that. His own third is very delayed, so he's taking an aggressive approach here, and it is in fact a robotics with no gases here, so probably going to be a very aggressive immortal timing. And look at that, the Overlord sees it.
Overlord sees it, and you know, Hurricane actually in this matchup has not only the biggest sample size, he gets a lot more, he's a lot more in the limelight than Sleep these days. Hurricane actually with a 58% win ratio, and now trying to establish himself this warp-in position. The force fields are pretty good for him, saving everything against the Zerglings right now, but of course he lost quite some energy there. And Hurricane already won against Sleep just in July back then. That was the only game that they played in Heart of the Swarm offline against each other, and Hurricane was successful there. But right now the Protoss player needs to be careful. Sleep is still on the move, taking down the Pylon.
Yeah, there's only 12 Zerglings on the map. The hatchery itself is actually not complete. 12 more lings on the way. The Warp Prism is going to come to join and help out. It's going to take a while to arrive, though. It's all about the next few force fields. He actually wants to get himself, I feel, in between the hatchery and the mineral line. And being out here in the open is the most place where he could actually be surrounded by lings, and he doesn't take my advice and actually gets surrounded here. And he's going to have to recall.
Yeah, he needs to be really careful here. He cannot take down the third base. That just doesn't work for him. So he moves out, tries to apply the pressure. The Warp Prism is a little bit too late to the party. Another round of Warp-ins could have done wonders here. As just highlighted by our observer, we do not have any probes currently, any of the simulators that we see there in the main base. Probably going to fix that in just a second. But the Zergling defense so far was a good one. But here comes the second move out by our Protoss.
I really like that, actually. The Warp Prism is spotted, but I love that he just recalls and then goes again, because a lot of Zerg players might be like, oh, okay, it's over. Oh, that was a mistake. A huge move command here. He's actually going to have to recall again. I think he has the energy, at least nearly. Yeah, he definitely does, but he does not recall. In fact, just goes for the lift instead, and then the recall. That's,
Okay, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would he recall when there is nothing on the ground anymore? There were only ground units for Sleep, but the entire army was already in the Warp Prism. He could have recalled a lot faster there.
Yeah, I think he's feeling some pressure here. This is looking actually not only not good, but disastrous for Hurricane. Like, absolutely disastrous.
At the same time, Sleep could have killed a lot more sentries there. He already took down a few of them, but then Hurricane immediately tried to retreat with a few that he still had in the battle. And if Sleep would have given chase, I'm pretty sure he could have killed at least one or two more. Like this, Hurricane is at least able to save some of his sentries, but as we already said, he lost a huge chunk of his army there, and he lost a lot of energy on that Mothership core that he could use there.
Now this Warp Prism actually could change things.
Yeah.
He has 4 sentries and there are a lot of energy, and now there's the turnaround, but it's a bit too late. Will he get the force fields off? No, he's too slow. Yeah. He's too slow, and the lings and the queens there now.
Force Field on the ramp could definitely have done a lot. Not kill the main base by any means, but with a warp in, you can at least put pressure on the Zerg player, make him try to get up in his main base and defend while you take down a few of the Harvesters. But as is, we have a pretty good situation here for Sleep.
Yeah, I was actually about to say to you, Keller, I mean, to be totally frank, if he actually tries to commit to this attack and not take a third base, I think it would be the worst idea that I've ever seen. I mean, obviously, Sleep has a ton of units. He's shown a ton of units. Obviously, he has a ton of units. He just tries to attack, and this would be a terrible idea. Taking the third base, on the other hand, is very smart because now the Zerg has spent so much of his larva on units that he doesn't have a lot of drones, and now he has to kind of commit and make sure he can shut down that third base.
Actually, it looks more and more like Sleepy wants to be really aggressive here. He doesn't build any Harvesters whatsoever. He's on 49 on 3 bases. It's like nothing. And he's up against so many Immortals, so I'm not quite sure if he can really make this attack work. Here comes the Time Warp, slowing this entire force down. The second wave is on the move, though. If he can get a sandwich position against Hurricane, that would be great for him. But we have another attack here. The Protoss player is moving in with this Warp Prism, and that actually forces Sleep to retreat with the second half of his army.
Hurricane is playing this really, really well. He's basically controlling both armies while he takes the third base. The third base is really just happening in the background. It's not even pressured because he's constantly trapping the Zerg army, but now that the Warp Prism was dealt with, he's actually coming full force across here. He's going to have to kill those rocks.
Look at that production tab. We just had... we have actually more and more roaches coming in. 22 additional Zerglings just completed. And this is 112 army supply against 60 army supply. Force fields are so important here. If he doesn't get good force fields off and is actually forced to face this army, I'm not sure if the Hurricane can make this happen. Well, here we go, moving in at the natural. The second force is trying to go.
Oh, he misses the force field. Oh, he doesn't actually. That was really weird. He could have force field there, but he was definitely in panic mode. One pylon does go down. Good force fields here. On the other hand, there's not a whole lot going on the other side. There they go, but already the Ling's doing so much damage at the front.
But those Immortals for the win here. They're going in and taking down everything in their path. And suddenly the army supply for Sleep is just gone. It just disappeared. It's like suddenly Hurricane snapped his finger and all those roaches disappeared. Immortals taking down everything, and that was actually like really important. Look at the army value lost here. 103 Zerglings taken out.
He has a second Robo in a Robotics Bay. He knows how ahead he is now. Look at the worker count. 61 to 55 remaining in Hurricane's favor. And things are looking really, really rough for Sleep. He was not able to get anything done there. Do you feel like he really had to commit there? After he saw the third base, he could have tried to pressure a little bit, but not commit so much? What do you think about that? I'm not so sure.
I don't think he really had to commit. The problem is really that Hurricane is already on a +2 attack upgrade, and that did so much in the last fight. Not only those Immortals, but at the same time also the Stalkers and the Zealots that we had did a lot of damage. Attacking into a position where the Protoss player with good force fields can just control the choke points was definitely not what Sleep wanted to do here. The fourth base going up a little bit faster and then heading into tech would probably have been the better choice in hindsight. That's also what he's trying to do right now. But he's still behind in the Harvester count, and Hurricane is gaining a lot of momentum.
He also has the better upgrades here. He's getting +3. And once he decided to drone, or rather commit to this instead of droning, I feel like that's when he should have been adding his Swarmos. Now he's kind of desperate with those Swarmos. This is a nice little catch here. Might pick off some sentries on the other hand. Hurricane is already ready. He traps the rest of the roaches, and I think he might actually be able to just go and end it with this army here.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he's going to do. He's up in army supply against the Zerg player at this time of the game in 16 minutes. This is kind of crazy.
He has the perfect composition too. Yeah, there are a few swarm hosts, but not very many, and there is that very critical observer here with the army. All he has to do is... Yeah. And, I mean, how many Immortals does he have? 6 Immortals.
This is insane, and EA will have no chance holding this. You know, if a Protoss player actually sandwiches the Zerg army, then you know something went
very wrong. And to think, I mean, from the start of things, it looked like Sleep had a big advantage, but it just did not end up that way with a really good defense there.
He tried to go for massive aggression, and he really sacked his economy for that, and then he didn't do any damage whatsoever. It was actually exactly the other way around. Hurricane took the entire army apart without losing too much, and then he looked at the game and was like, you know what, I'm just going to go across the map and kill you.
Yeah, GG. I feel like the defense was so good for Hurricane, but at the same time, Sleep didn't have to attack there. He tried to attack up 2 fronts, which is smart, but there was just enough force fields, especially with that Warp Prism coming back at the nick of time at the natural. He dropped those 4 sentries down and used those to defend with the 1 Immortal he had there. It was definitely a razor-thin defense, but once he actually had the force fields down with all of those Immortals, especially at the third base, he had 4 Immortals there. He just made the roaches disappear, like you said, with almost like a snap of the fingers.
I feel Symbol, sorry, not Symbol, but of course Sleep, they are overextending it a little bit. After he defended, he defended really well. He forced the first recall, then he forced the second recall. At that point, droning up, getting that fourth base out would have been no problem for him. And then he can go down whatever tech path he chooses to go. The third base is played enough for the Protoss player. So in this scenario, going for this aggression with only Zerglings and Roaches was definitely a little bit weird, especially since he knew there were so many. He knew about the upgrades. There was a +2 already done. We had so many Immortals already in the game. He was trying to go for it, but he didn't do any damage whatsoever.
I think part of the process, like, this is one of the things I was thinking about, but I'm not sure, is after he used 2 recalls, he knows there's no more recalls, right?
No.
And then that small Zerg army, the first one that was to the south, there was a second one always ready to attack. The sentry's distracted a little bit, but I think he was thinking, you don't have any more recalls, and you keep moving pretty far forward with your army. Maybe if I can trap your whole army in the middle of the map and kill it, then I just win the game.
That Warp Prism was a big problem because he wanted to do exactly that. He had that small, the Zalnaga Watchtower. We had this battle between the 2 army sides there, and then there was the second wave coming down, and he was really trying to trap this entire army. But the problem was that Hurricane never really just focused only on the defense, he also tried to be a little bit aggressive, and he moved the Warp Prism in at the natural and put those units in there. So suddenly Sleep was forced to take the second part of his army and move it back to defend there, and he couldn't trap this army anymore. So that was also a really good move that Hurricane made.
Exactly. He was always just controlling where the Zerg army was long enough to get his Immortal count up. And then once he had that, it was just a composition battle. And the micro from Hurricane was decent, but it was more just about the fact that Immortals just destroy everything that has armor.
Now we have the Linoctopus.
Linoc Foyu coming back here, and Linoc is looking more and more in shape these days. Zerg versus Zerg is a decent matchup for him.
Really? You think? I thought he gained a few pounds.
Well, I mean, it's StarCraft-wise, but a very good point.
No, to be quite honest, I don't think the new uniform is really... That color doesn't really suit it.
Here's the thing. For those of you guys who don't know, this is actually a tip that, it's always good to know. When you wear white, you look bigger. When you wear black, you look slimmer. Almost always, no matter what. So just keep that in mind. If you're feeling like you gained a few pounds, wear dark. If you're feeling skinny, you wear white sometimes.
Didn't just gain a few. I always tease him and tell him he should go and do some sports. I'll go to the gym with me, but he doesn't want to.
Well, that's Linoc for you. Symbol.
Yeah.
Symbol here is so good as a player overall, and Zerg versus Zerg against Linoc is probably really frustrating for him, because he's probably thinking, I could beat any FOU player just about in almost any matchup, but facing Linoc is possibly my toughest opponent, because it's a ZVZ. Linoc is a strong player, he's good at ZVZ as well, and ZVZ itself can be a little bit... You can have weird games, there can be build order losses, there can be just that unlucky fungal that hits all your mutas. Things can go awry very quickly, but it's Fruitland.
Yeah, it's Fruitland, and that just this adds the extra little sort of spice to the game.
A little bit of flavor, if you will.
Yeah, a little bit of flavor, exactly. That fruity flavor that we have here.
It's going to be juicy on this map.
A very juicy map, indeed. And let's see what exactly we're going to... I mean, this is one of 2 mirror matches that we have today, and I'm actually really excited for it. I feel this is one of the better ones. Linoc against Symbol, always a very good game.
This is... I think this is, for me, like I said before, I even tweeted this earlier, this is like the match for the night. Whoever wins this one, I think, is going to get the momentum for the Team League match.
Yeah, we said it in the last game already. It was very important for you that Hurricane wins the game. And right now, this is definitely leading one team, not only giving them a lead, but winning a very crucial match at that. So Zerg versus Zerg, and then on Fruitland of all maps, should be a really interesting one, especially when you control the map and you can go for those lemons and get the extra 500 minerals. That would, of course, be really important here. But I don't think we have seen a Zerg versus Zerg on the map just yet, so that's going to be our first.
Yeah, definitely true. Looks like both players are ready. The map is up and loaded. It's Fruitland. This is the GSTL. Tied up. Who's going to take the lead? Will it be FOU or Azubu? Let's jump into the match right now.